Hi everyone, welcome to Anthea Style. Today I'm so glad that you've joined me. As you can see, I'm here in my garden and I thought I'd take you through what my garden looks like in the middle of the month of May so you can see what's blooming, what's not, and hear all about what we're going to be doing to the garden this year. So make sure, if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel, to please hit the notification button as well so that you can stay in the loop as to what is happening in my garden this year for 2023. Let's go along. At the beginning of our property here, we have a beautiful ornamental pear tree. And ornamental meaning that it does not bear any fruit whatsoever, so no pears grow on this. And this tree now is approximately 30 years old, and it bloomed last week with the beautiful white soft flowers on it. And that happens every spring, and then afterwards it's all just the green leaves. And at the base of the tree I have a small garden bed here where I have some perennials and some tulips, and normally I put some annuals in here, but I'm thinking this year that I'm going to try and up it a little bit and keep with the perennials just to cut down on the amount of work that I'm having to do. So these tulips here are regular tulips, bloomed about 2 weeks ago, and they were a beautiful deep red color, which eventually goes to a medium pink. But as you can see, they are at the end of their bloom cycle. So I will be eventually cutting them back to here and leaving the foliage to let the foliage dry naturally so that all the nutrients as much as possible will go back into the bulbs, which will remain in the ground till next season, spring again. I also have these lovely parrot-like tulips, which are very feathery on the end, and they are a shorter stem, these soft pink ones, and I think they grew a little bit shorter because of the location where they are. And next to them I have a light bright white, and then on the other side of the tree, we'll come around here, is this taller, same as the front but in another shade of deeper pink, and that again is the parrot tulip. And I'm absolutely loving those. I'm hoping to maybe plant some more. And as you can see here, a little bit of purple's coming. This is called an allium bulb. And that is a nice height, and that's getting ready to bloom like the one just next to it that opened up just today. And I love that medium shade of purple. So as you can see, my garden at the front here is pinks and whites and purples. Right down here, this is very, very soft, and it feels, if you've ever felt a lamb's ear, this is called lamb's ear. And this will grow quite moundfold-like, and it'll have tall stalks, silvery white, with tiny purple blooms all the way down on it. So that is a perennial that self-seeds and spreads, and that could be split and moved to another location if I wanted to in my garden as well. Then next to that over here, I have the sedum, and this blooms late summer, early fall with a soft pink stemmed flower on it, and the foliage actually will change color, more appropriate to fall colors. And then right over here, we have daylily, and that blooms a nice medium yellow color, and that blooms all summer long. And I like to get in and clip out the dead blooms, and it forces it to bloom again for me. And then right here I have purple salvia, and that will grow into a large mound, and the flowers are about this high, just where my hand is, like that. So a good maybe 24 inches, 18 to 24 inches, and that grows lovely, nice small plumes of purple flowers. And then right in front of it is a hydrangea, and as you can see, it looks like that really didn't do well through the winter months. So I have a little bit of cleanup here to do on this bed by taking branches off and just doing a little bit of raking and weeding and pulling out some self-seeding that's happening here, which is coming from this ornamental pear tree. But I'm going to cut this back and see if that gives it a chance for the nutrients to go back into where the good growth is. If not, I might relocate that. I do have some other perennials, like I mentioned, that I'm going to be putting here, and I'll show you those when we get to the back of the house on our tour. Some of you may have seen this tree already. This is a beautiful crabapple tree, and it blooms in the spring. And when this first starts to bud, it's a beautiful dark cerise pink color, and then it eventually goes light. And I'm happy to be out here today to show you this because this time of year it starts to get a little bit windy and the blossoms start blowing off. So we're catching this tree in bloom at the tail end so you can see it. And that is a crab apple tree. If I failed to mention that, that's a crab apple tree. And again, I have some more perennials and assortment in the garden. I have lots and lots and lots of lily of the valley. And these are just starting to bloom now. And they are a beautiful white little bead pearl flower on a stem. And I do love to cut these and bring these in the house and make a bouquet with them. You can use the foliage, but sometimes it's just really nice just to pick off. And I'm going to just pick this off so you can see. This right here. These are lily of the valley and they smell like perfume. So when you bring that in the house, and I just simply put that in a little clear glass mason jar with a little water, and I pick some of my hosta leaves and put it around, and maybe on a later video I can show you how I do that arrangement, but it's just a nice simple easy arrangement that looks good with any decor because it's just a simple neutral white color. And they're actually starting to smell. Those are so pretty. I wish you could smell that through the lens. So we have tons of lily of the valley. I have different types of hostas. I have more tulips. And over here, I have a lovely peony that is starting to come up in my garden. And I planted peonies in my garden, in particular in memory of my mother. Her garden in our backyard, down one length of it, was all peonies, pink and white alternating. So I wanted to make sure to incorporate that into my garden here on a smaller scale. But this will bloom a beautiful pink and they're lovely for cut flowers. Again, I have more allium and hostas, another peony here. This purple leaf flower, I just know it as yellow star. I don't know the actual name because it was a clip that somebody gave me from their garden and they didn't know what it was. So I really don't know the proper name for it. So I just call it yellow star because it blooms little yellow star flowers on the very top. And they're lovely to put in an arrangement for contrast color with your greens as well, with your foliage. And then this is a hydrangea, and I believe this one is a limelight hydrangea, and it starts off green and then it goes to white, and it's got lovely long head flowers on it. And over here, this is a spirea that has been in my garden for many, many years, and it really didn't do well the past couple of years, but it's starting to look like it wants to come back. So I think I'm going to just leave it for this year. I was thinking of replacing it with another hydrangea here at the front, but I'm going to leave it and see what it does. But this is a spirea that blooms a beautiful soft pink petal flower on it. I'm giving this plant a chance to see if it'll grow up in front of this cedar because the cedar is very old. It's as old as the house and it's starting to look very weathered looking, but that's a big job to have those removed right now, and then I don't really know what I'd want to plant here. I'm thinking if we remove that cedar tree that I'd like to plant possibly a Japanese maple, one of those smaller ones, for the color and foliage as well, and it's just kind of like a dainty leafy lacy leaf on it. So that's a possibility. But for right now, we're leaving this front garden as is. Have some cleanup to do. Another hydrangea here where I will be cutting back on these old wood stems here to clean that up. And some of them I'll be able just to pull because they're a little bit dry. But I'll get my actual clippers and clip that back to give that a fresh, clean start for this season. And again, any tulips here, I'll be cutting the stem right back down to the base and letting the foliage dry naturally. And I'm going to try and be patient with that because that's something I haven't really been good at because I like to get my color in the garden. Again, I normally do annuals up here, but I'm thinking I'm going to be reintroducing some more perennials again this year. And this shrub here is called bridal wreath spirea, and it will bloom dainty clusters of white flowers. And I believe that's going to happen next month in the month of June. And right beside it, we have a hydrangea tree, and that is a beautiful shade of pink. As you can tell, my theme for my garden are a lot of pinks and whites and purples. And that has a cone-like head flower on it as well. And then right here we have our spring pots, and these I potted up a few weeks ago. This plant here is called ranunculus, and I've always wanted this plant here is called ranunculus. I've wanted to always have that, and I found that one of our local nurseries here called Sheridan Nurseries, and finally got my hands on it and was so happy to have planted that along with some pansies, and though they're in an assortment of colors. And then I also have some English ivy just trailing out here. So I purposely planted it in these older style black cast iron pots because when I'm ready to do my summer pots, which will be soon, I'm going to have these pots moved to the back where it's much more shaded. And that is because I've been told that the pansies will actually, I mean, they're starting to wither out now, but they'll make another reappearance in the fall. So they need to be kept in a cool spot. So that's what I'm going to try and do to maintain this planter. And this is the other one that we've done over here. Same thing, some more ranunculus, some pansies. Look at the beautiful yellow and purple colors. Really just pretty and dainty. I've enjoyed that. And then for Mother's Day, my husband always traditionally buys me some flowers for my garden. So I picked up this planter, and this is from a nursery here locally called Witzke's. And this has some verbena, some million bells, and it has impatiens. I don't know what color that's going to be. I'm hoping it's not red because I don't like red flowers in my garden. So I'm hoping it's a pink shade, but we'll have to wait and see what that does. And this is just in a 13-inch plastic black pot, which I will be transplanting into one of those cocoa mulch fiber baskets, the forms. And I have a wrought iron black bird cage that I usually hang right here on the side by our front door. And lastly, at the front here, I have my window box. This is a ceramic clay pot that I actually just washed and painted with a black paint. As you can see, this is the natural color here. But I like the rusticness of that because it's not too rustic, but looks a little bit more natural in my garden. And that is a spring planter as well, that it just sits on my window ledge to the garage by the front door. And when I do my summer planters, I will have them either up on this landing here or down. Something again that I'm thinking of doing for this season is, and I've started in the back and you'll see that a bit later in the next video, I am trying to simplify and not have as much planters to look after. And the reason for that is when you do these annuals in your garden in the pots, it takes a lot of watering, and that means that's daily watering that you have to do. And depending on where your location is and what your weather is, sometimes you have to water them twice a day, and that is a lot. And for me, that's a lot right now because we are in the midst of trying to finish up some renovations at our family cottage. So we're kind of there in and back and forth on the weekends. So I can't have a lot of plants here that need my attention and care if I'm at the cottage on the weekends. So I'm trying to simplify, which is hard for me because I love a ton of plants and flowers around, but I need to be able to maintain that much better this year. So I'm trying to look for easier plants that don't take a lot of watering. So we'll have to see what I do for the summer, but as right now for spring, as you can see, I just had this one window box up here by my front door, and I resisted the urge to put planters here by the door. So just this for this year, and then we're gonna wait for this vine on the house to start to go in bloom. And if you go back on other videos, you may have seen how full and lush and gorgeous that is in the summer and the fall. And this is starting to slowly bud out. The leaves feel kind of waxy, and you can see the actual tone. It's got a little bit of a orangey reddish, and when it first started it was a little bit burgundy. And in the fall, after it's green in the fall, that actually goes a beautiful, beautiful shade of red. So right now I'd like to take you, and please come along and join me because I'm going to take you into our backyard, and we're going to go around the front of the house through the side gate, and I can show you a little bit more of my garden before we enter fully into the backyard. So see guys, right here, this is the coloring of the vine, and this is what it's going to be looking like, and this whole wall from front to back, and it wraps around the back of the house, will be absolutely covered with this foliage, which I just love. And this vine is called a Boston ivy. Right below here I have a small garden bed on the side of the house, and this has over the years been a little bit of trial and error because in the summer months it gets really, really hot here. and we've had a lot of our plants and shrubs actually burn up. And if you're hearing stuff in the background, guys, we live in the suburbs and real life happens here. We've got planes going. My husband's washing our vehicles right now, and our neighbors have a daycare, so you might be hearing some noises, but that's real life in our yard here, which we love. So in this garden here, I decided and actually researched what would do better, and I gave it a try, and it's actually working for me. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them, and that is English lavender, and that has done absolutely well here. The trick with English lavender is not to water a lot, which works good for me. It's cutting down on my watering. English lavender doesn't like a lot of water. It does well in a drier soil. And that lavender, if you're not sure of the coloring, comes in white, but this is actually a purple color that I purchased for our yard color. And then this plant over here, I believe, I'm trying to remember as I'm doing this video, guys, I think that's a form of a, let me just see. I don't know what that is. I really can't remember if that's a Shasta daisy that's self-seeded here. I don't remember because I don't remember planting that because I took everything out and I did all of the lavender plants. But anyhow, we'll see maybe in the summer tour, I'll be able to show you what that has looked like. And then right here, we just have a small hosta and another one here. And then over here, this is this black lace elderberry that we have. And I'm hoping that'll start to come up on the fence here. And then that I have to do here is I have to remove the lily of the valley, which has self-seeded again here in my yard. The wind carries the seeds, so that'll be a little bit of cleanup. And then the top dressing for this will be some nice black mulch to help retain the moisture of water in this bed, which helps again cut down on the amount of watering that you have to do. So come on with me through to the backyard. Come on, Lila. Okay, so right here, we're going to come on through. This is also a perennial, and this is called Solomon's Seal. Look at those blooms, which I wish they were on top, but they're underneath that perennial plant. Look at that two-tone color. Beautiful cream and a soft, I call that a chartreuse green on the little tips there. Very pretty, and that is a spring blooming plant. I wish it bloomed all summer, but that is just a beautiful thing. And then right beside that, I have a ton of raspberries, and raspberries do self-seed as well, the plant, which is fine here because it's contained here. And as they start to get taller, and they go very tall, about 3 feet high, we actually stake this around and then put twine to hold the plant bush in against the wall here. And this is such a nice treat to come out in your garden and pick fresh raspberries to have in the morning with our yogurt, which we absolutely love. So next I'll take you through. Come on, Lai. And this is where we enjoy a lot of our time in the mornings and in the evenings on our back deck area. We have a 2-level deck and then a patio with stone down here. For this year back here, for right now, the spring season, I chose to do 2 planters, and my color scheme are the whites and the yellows for right now. I know I keep saying for right now because I am trying to determine how much more I'm going to be doing for a planter. Again, I'm wanting to simplify. So this black planter here is planted up with a plant called Diplodania. It's quite common in your nurseries that you will find this particular plant in a deep red or a hot pink color. I've done the hot pink before and I absolutely love it, but I thought I would change it up this year and go with the whites. Something you'll notice if you do white in your garden is at nighttime your garden looks bright because you can see your blooms on your flowers. This plant here is called a begonia, and that's a yellow begonia, and then some more English ivy. You guys can probably tell by now I love my ivy. I was tempted to put another plant here. If I do, what I'm thinking of putting there is another begonia, but maybe in white, but I haven't found it in this small leaf yet. I'm finding it in the large leaf, but I would prefer to have it in the small leaf to match that. So if anything, that may go there, but if not, this may just fill in. Sometimes less is more. Usually I have that whole container just stocked full of plants, but I'm trying again to simplify and cut down on the cost because, as we all know, after COVID, everything just went up in price. So I'm trying to create something that's budget friendly so that you guys can see that you can do this as well. So again, that was just 3 little plants in that planter. And over here, I've done the same thing on that side. That's matching either side of the swing. And these were just some azaleas from a project my daughter had done at our local church that we had done clippings off of for an Easter arch. And we're just trying to see if we can keep this going. I'm not really a patient flower grower for azaleas because I find it a bit of a messy plant, but I'm giving it a try. But we'll see what happens with that. And that's it for plants right now. As you can see by the back door here, there is this basket. I normally have some type of a trailing vine in that. And then below that, where that chair is, I have a planter that I put, and I put a fern in. I absolutely love the ferns because, again, minimal watering, and it just grows really big and full and fills that spot, and it's like an accent on our deck there. And guys, right here, look where the vine is. This vine actually started to grow over onto the back of our house here. You can see the markings on that siding, which we have to have cleaned off. But we didn't want it to continue growing because it started to grow all over the window, which didn't look really nice. So we're trying to contain it to just the brickwork here. And just behind here on our lower deck, this is another plant that my husband bought for me for Mother's Day. Isn't that pretty? That is called the Black-Eyed Susan vine. I've always wanted one of those, and we walked into the nursery where we got the planter at the front of our house, and this was there. So this I'm going to plant in another tall black pot that we have, and I'm going to put what I'd like is a nice black wrought iron cage on the top of it, but I don't have that right now. So I think for now I'm just going to stake it with bamboo sticks so that that vine can continue to grow up tall on it. And in behind there, I purchased just a couple of more annuals, and these are going to be used for my pots at the front of the house for summer. This is a beautiful dahlia, and I'll just pick that pot up. And that is actually a bulb that blooms into that flower. And if you have the area to do so at the end of summer, you can dig that bulb out and save it, just dry it and put it in a brown paper bag and keep that stored somewhere in a cool spot. And then you can put that back in your garden next season. So those were at our local superstore, and it's called Super Gigantico Dahlia, and that was $9. So this is the same brand, just to show you as an example, that was purchased for the begonia and the dipladenia. They were $9, so 9 and 9, 18, and this ivy was in a smaller pot for $4.50. So a relatively affordable way to do a planter box. And then next to that, I have more of the dipladenia in white. And then this little one here, this is again the Gigantico brand, and that is salvia. And it will grow 12 to 24 inches in height, and it says semi-moist for your water content, and it handles full sun or part sun. That is how you read that label if you're not sure about that. When you see the sun like that, means the exposure is for full sun or partly sunny exposure. And then it shows you how far apart to plant the plants if you're doing this in a garden bed, and how tall they would grow, as well as how much moisture this plant needs. So that is purple salvia. This vine that's planted at the end of our deck, and it's on a half pergola that my husband built. And this vine is called Silver Lace. And when this blooms later in summer, it's all white, dainty, lacy flowers all over the top of this, which is just lovely. Just a word of caution, if you are allergic to bees, the bees love this, so that might not be something that you'd want to put in your garden, but it's such a beautiful plant. And on the other side of this pergola, I have planted a pink clematis. And if you look real close, look at the buds coming on it. They're kind of feathery and furry-like. Those are where the buds are going to open and produce a beautiful pink flower called clematis. So I'm trying to train this to grow upright. I will eventually be taking off this wire trellis, and this will have little hooks in on the wood to get that to train up, and I'll use just a fine twine and have that come up on the other side to hopefully meet the silver lace at the very top of this pergola. So with purple and white, I think that'll be very fitting for my color scheme in my yard. Now, I'm going to move on to this garden box here because this is a story in itself. It is not planted up as of yet, and that's number one due to the fact that my husband was refinishing our deck. It didn't get stained last year, so he just finished that, and I was able to get all the furniture on here. This normally is my vegetable garden, one of my vegetable gardens here, and then I have three other boxes that I use for my vegetables. Well, last year was a challenge to say the least because we had a lot of wildlife in our garden, and in particular, a Maine squirrel that made this yard his home or her home and went to town on my vegetables and had great lunches and dinners all the time. So I don't know what I'm going to do right yet, but this was planted up with tomatoes, and this grew very, very high because we had twine that I attached to the top of this pergola, and the variety that we had grew all the way up, and they were Million Bell tomatoes, and then there was another variety, which, sorry, I can't remember right now, but it was just lovely to come out and pick your fresh tomatoes for your salad. Last year in our gardens here in Ontario, I don't know about where you live, the tomatoes didn't do really well. So I don't know if I'm going to venture into doing that this year. I know I can't plant any other type of vegetables down here because of the problems with the squirrels right now. So I'm thinking that this might be flowers. So right now I have, and these need a bit of watering, I purchased Shasta daisies. And here's the tag right here. I'll just take that out so you can see it. Shasta daisy, and that variety is called Madonna. And again, I have to come out and water that, but that will handle full exposure of sun. It was Mother's Day this weekend, so I have not been out here for 2 days, so of course those got neglected, but I'll have to get that watered. And then this is called English daisy, and it's just like a little button of a flower. Isn't that pretty? These perennials are the ones that I'm thinking that I'm going to put in my front garden bed down by the tree at the end of our property to try and get a little bit more of a perennial garden going, like I mentioned earlier. And then I had 2 containers that are now empty that my wonderful husband thought he'd help me out with because I had them seeded right here. And look at, guys, he planted them for me, but I didn't want them planted here. So I'm leaving them for now until I'm able to move them to the front. But these plants here that I purchased, they are called garden phlox, and it's a perennial, and that blooms a beautiful mauvey pink color, and they handle full sun. So again, make sure to check the exposure of your property. If you're not sure, watch your sun exposure morning, noon, and afternoon, and see what the sun does, where it moves to in your garden to know when you're purchasing your plants, if you're purchasing for full sun, part sun, or shade. That's so important because your plants won't thrive well if you don't have the right exposure type of plants bought for your property. So on this back area in our backyard here, we have some more perennials which come up every year. I don't have to do anything other than do a little bit of thinning and trimming and cleanup. Lots more lily of the valley. We have lots of cedar trees around the perimeter of our property. And then we have a beautiful, I just absolutely love this. This is another crabapple tree that's white. And that is just a thing of beauty in my garden. Oh, and it smells so pretty. So you can see it's got pink, it buds out pink, but then when it opens up, it's white. And that tree, I don't know, that must be 15 or 20 feet high now. That's been in our garden now for about 15 years, and I just love it. Next to it, I have bridal-wreath spirea, and that blooms every spring for us. And this is what you'll see. Interesting, this is what was planted in the front of the house, But in the back of my yard, it has already bloomed, but the one at the front hasn't bloomed yet. So again, it might be due to the exposure that that plant has. Lots of hostas back here. I tried to make this a hosta garden. I have some self-seeding stuff happening here that I'll have to get in and clean up on. But this, because it gets a ton of shade, and because our dog loves to come back here in the corner and snoop around, the hostas are very tolerant of being kind of trampled through by the dogs. So I don't mind that. So that's going to remain as a hosta garden. And this plant here was a clipping again that somebody gave me, and it blooms, and I'm sorry guys, I don't know the name of that, but it's a very tall white plant. And if anybody knows what that plant is, make sure to leave me a comment, because I would love to know the name of it. And it gets really, really wide and bushy and very, very tall. And as you can see, it does self-seed. So I've got one there and one here and a couple back there. And then lots of hydrangeas back here in my garden, limelight hydrangea that's coming in here, and more hydrangea all through here. And this bush here and there, that is called a smoke bush. And I planted this also just in honor of my husband and I, where we had our wedding pictures taken. It was at a historical home, and one of our main pictures was taken in front of what's called a beautiful smoke bush. And that's what this is. And it has light, almost sparkle-like pink flowers on it. So that is planted there for coloring with some more sedum. And I have perennial geraniums down here. So I do need to get out here and clean up the bed. My husband did a little bit of cleanup for me, but I need to just do some more pulling and sorting and maybe transplanting a few things, and then some mulch on top. And we come over here, lovely hosta. This tree here is a maple tree, and this was recently planted last year. And this was a tree that I got free from our local region. They were giving out free trees. You just had to sign up, and I went down and picked this up. And that's what that is there. So it's coming along nicely. This is its first full year in our garden. And just some more perennials here again, some more of the sedum, and this yellow star flower. And then this is a peony here, and a few more perennials. And right above me, look at this tree. This was another plant that I got years ago. A lady was moving, and she had planted some of the trees in her yard and didn't want to leave them. And she offered them free to anybody that would just come with their own shovel and dig it up. So I dug it up and I brought this home, and it was just a tiny little shrub, and it's grown into this beautiful lilac tree. And I love to cut these lilacs and bring them in the house because it just gives a lovely scent as well, natural perfume in the house. So that is just beginning to open up. Oh, it smells so nice. When the wind blows on it, you get such a lovely soft fragrance. So that is our lilac tree. And then right in behind here, this is our garden shed. And I have a tree here. Oh, that's interesting. It's like a little star. But this is called a Rose of Sharon tree. And that has a beautiful, soft, pinky white flower on it. And it's just starting to bud. Look at those tiny little, that has a beautiful, I believe this is a soft pink flower that you will see on this here. And then below it I have some boxwood that looks like it has some damage from the winter. We had a really harsh winter, cold wise. So we'll get that trimmed up and give that a chance to catch itself. And some more hosta. And this plant here is a euonymus, and I love the foliage on that because of the variegation with that soft yellow and green. And then I have a viola that has self-seeded back here that will bloom some purple flowers. Years ago, oh, there's one little bloom if I can get to it. Look at that, 2 little blooms. Now the only thing about this plant here, viola, it's lovely, but it self-seeds. And years ago we had a lot of it, and we had to rip it out of our garden because it self-seeded in our lawn, and that was a whole nother story. But I might just keep that there because it's contained. And then these window boxes, I have to replace the cocoa mulch liner and replace the soil and decide what I'm going to put in there for my summer flowers. So that's replicated on the other side of the shed as well. with a spirea bush and more hosta and a boxwood. And then lastly, I usually hang a planter right by the door in the wrought iron basket of flowers. This year, I'm thinking that maybe I might try to just place a fern, because again, I want to cut down on the amount of watering that we have to do. And I think that'll be it for this summer for that particular location for a hanging basket. So guys, I hope you've enjoyed the tour of my garden during the month of May this year, and you get to see what it's like before it fully blooms and comes into its full potential of what it can look like. I hope you've learned some good little tips along the way. If you have any questions or comments, please make sure to leave them for me. And again, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, Anthea Style, please make sure to do so by hitting the link down below, and also hit the notification button so that you don't miss out on any upcoming videos. So have a great day, and hope to see you back on our next video.